Hi everyone, my name is Ruben and I decided to do my presentation on worker stress. Defining worker stress. So worker stress is physiological and or psychological reaction to an event that is perceived as physically or mentally demanding. There are two types of sources of work stress. The first is organizational and individual. But for the purpose of this presentation, I decided to focus on organizational sources of work stress, and there are two main types. There are work task stressors, which includes work overload, which is when a job requires excessive output and or speed from an employee who cannot meet such demands. There's also work role stressors, which include job ambiguity, which results from vague instructions of job or job tasks. There's also work family conflict, which is stress resulting from an inability to balance both family and job affairs. So a real life work problem. So personally, I do not work, and the past two jobs that I have worked were I didn't really see them as stressful. But personally, since arriving to college, I have had a good amount of stress as a student, just as any other student. This is because the demands that were required were vastly outnumbered by the resources available to me in order to meet these demands. In other words, some of the workload given to me was too much for me to bear because I was also involved in extracurricular activities while still trying to maintain communication with my family. Another aspect of stress as a student was job ambiguity, which has occurred to me once in one class last year. And the class in general was simply unorganized and instructions were vague that I began being stressed because there were moments I didn't know what was assigned or expected because of poor coordination. Another aspect I have experienced is work family conflict, which is basically the attempt to balance the job and family affairs, as mentioned before. I find it difficult to achieve such a balance given that home is like 3 hours away, and I can see how it could be more difficult for other students. Another example that everyone experiences is workload stress during finals or midterm season. I know I'm not the only one who experiences a lot of stress during this time and that I don't experience the most. However, the effects of such excessive amounts of stress could be damaging to all students to a point that would leave many susceptible to illness and other types of form of health problems. So the research study that I decided to do was called Childcare Providers, Work Stress, and Personal Well-Being by Monica Faulkner. The type of research was correlational. This research study sought to identify work-related stressors for childcare providers and their impact on their well-being, given the fact that childcare providers have high rates of depression relative to the overall prevalence of depression in the population. Using snowball sampling, the researchers gathered 7 focus groups, each comprised of 4 to 6 childcare respondents. The researchers used semi-structured conversation interviews asking 2 primary questions: what stress providers encounter in a workplace and how they take care of themselves. The responses were recorded and analyzed, and results indicated that childcare providers experience personal strain because of work, and many reported sleep disruptions, implying some level of exhaustion. And even though that mental disorders were not really truly addressed in the research study, the physiological issues reported mean that depression and anxiety cannot be ruled out. So some solutions to the problem. I would suggest that, and obviously, in my personal problem, I decided to do the job as a student. But in other job affairs, I would suggest that to have managers take the time to talk with possible employees and create a communication that clears job specifications and job task roles in order to avoid job ambiguity. I would also allow for at least some minimal flexibility in work schedules in order for employees to balance job and family affairs in order to avoid that job and family conflict that occurs. I would also try to minimize employee demands under certain jobs that require excessive and exhausting work to a point where stress is at an optimal point rather than too much or too little. And yeah, thank you.